Now, the deal to release 50 hostages in exchange for 150 Palestinian prisoners has been the result of hectic back and forth negotiations. The US, Qatar and Egypt have played a key role in securing the deal. We have some details of the secret negotiations that are behind the deal. It started with Qatar, a long-established mediator in the region. Shortly after Hamas's October 7th attack, Qatar approached the White House with sensitive information regarding the hostages. Qatari officials requested a team called CEL be established to work out the issue privately. The Biden administration addressed the request. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan put a seasoned diplomat with deep West Asia experience, Brett McGurk, on the job. Another National Security Council official, Josh Jetler, was tasked to set up the team. The CEL operated in secret. No other key U.S. agencies knew about it. U.S. Middle East envoy McGurk held daily conversations with the Qatari Prime Minister that were reported back to Sullivan and President Joe Biden. On October 13th, Biden spoke with the families of American hostages taken by Hamas or are missing. And October 18th, Biden met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Tel Aviv. Securing the release of hostages was the central focus of these talks, along with a humanitarian truce, as per officials. Then, days later, on October 23rd, the efforts of this secret cell yielded a positive result. 2 American hostages, a mother and daughter duo, were released by Hamas. It was the very first hostage release, and it gave the Biden administration hope that more such breakthroughs could be achieved. This was the time when talks also began between CIA and Mossad chiefs on a regular basis. The very next day, on October 24th, US also got a word that Hamas had agreed to one of the deal specifics to release women and children. However, this was also the time Israel was preparing to launch a ground invasion into Gaza. And for this deal to pan out, the Israeli operation had to be delayed. US officials then debated on the issue with Israelis. But Israeli officials put forward their argument that there is no proof that the hostages were still alive. Hence, they could not agree to delay the offensive. Hamas had claimed they could not determine who they were holding as hostages until a pause in fighting began. US and Israel saw this as dubious, and Israel went ahead with its ground invasion. But Israel said it is open to a pause in fighting if a hostage deal is put together. After the Israeli operation began, Biden for weeks engaged in negotiations on the hostages. Demands were made that Hamas must produce the lists of hostages it was holding, their identifying information and guarantees of release. The communication was difficult and messages had to be passed from Doha or Cairo into Gaza and back. As a result of these talks, an agreement was taking shape. In the first phase, women and children hostages will be freed in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. This was agreed by all the sides, except by Hamas, on producing a list of criteria identifying the hostages. On November 9th, CIA chief met with his Mossad counterpart and Qatari leader in Doha. But the key obstacle remained on Hamas's refusal to identify who it was holding. 3 days later, Biden called the Emir of Qatar and demanded this crucial information. Shortly after Biden's call, Hamas produced details of the hostages it said would be released in the first phase of the deal. On November 14th, Biden in a call urged Netanyahu to take the deal, and Netanyahu agreed. However, the talks were stalled as communications went dark in Gaza. On November 18th, US diplomat McGurk met in Doha with the Qatari Prime Minister. CIA chief was also dialed in after he spoke with Mossad. The meeting identified the last remaining gaps towards a deal. The agreement was now structured for women and children to be freed in the first phase, but also with an aim to bring all hostages home to their families. On November 19th, in Egypt, the US diplomat met the Egypt intelligence chief. There, he learned that Hamas leaders had accepted nearly all the agreements discussed the day before in Doha. In Cairo, the officials worked out the one remaining issue, the number of hostages to be released, and ultimately they agreed on the deal to release 50 known women and children. Our correspondent Jody Cohen has sent us this report from Ra'anana, Israel.
The Israeli government has voted in favour of a hostage release deal. This would see 50 living hostages released in exchange for a 4-day pause in fighting and the early release from prison of 150 Palestinian women and under 18 prisoners, including some convicted of attempted murder and involvement in terror attacks. For the first time, the Red Cross could be able to visit the remaining 190 hostages in Gaza. The Israeli opposition, US and EU have all welcomed the deal. The pause in fighting could be extended 1 day for every 10 hostages released, up to a maximum of 10 days pause in total. The fighting is then expected to continue, with Defence Minister Gallant saying that Israel's ground offensive against Hamas was key to pressuring Hamas to negotiate, and that without it, there would be no chance to secure the release of the remaining hostages. This is Jodie Cohen for WION, World as One.
So what are the projected effects of this truce on both parties and the people of Gaza? Let's take a look at this report by Shivan Chanana.
A ceasefire deal with the Hamas group that would bring a temporary halt to a devastating war that has stretched on for over 6 weeks between Israel and Hamas. Under the deal, Hamas is to free 50 of the over 200 hostages that it is holding in the Gaza Strip over a 4-day period. The Israeli government said that it would extend the lull by an additional day for every 10 hostages released. Now, here's a look at how the temporary truce will affect the ongoing war. First, let's take a look back at what has happened in the past. Since 1948, Israel has fielded a frightening military machine for Hamas. It is a hugely asymmetric struggle. Hamas needed to find a way out, including for the sake of its own population, who are paying the highest price here. The temporary truce will bring respite for people. The fighting in Gaza has been taking place in a densely populated area, and Hamas fighters are physically close to and even perhaps immersed in civilian populations of Gaza. Now, the United Nations and other world organizations have said that it is essential for Hamas to free the hostages that it holds. The people of Gaza, on the other hand, have critical humanitarian needs: food, water, shelter, safety, fuel, as well as hospital and medical support. All is needed in the Gazan region. Now, the decades-long conflict between Israelis and Palestinians is rooted in competing claims to the Holy Land, and it includes disputes over borders, Jerusalem, security, and Palestinian refugees. Both Israel and Hamas have broken ceasefire agreements in the past, and in 2008, Gaza truce was broken after Israeli troops killed 6 Hamas gunmen in a raid into the territory. Now, then, in 2014, Hamas broke a ceasefire by killing 2 soldiers and kidnapping a 3rd. However, the stakes are high and the situation is different this time around. Both Israel and Hamas would want to abide by terms and not put their main backers in a tough spot, that is, the US and Qatar. Hamas remains committed to the death and destruction of Israel. Senior Hamas officials have stated that the group intends to attack Israel, and they intend to attack Israel again. Analysts say the temporary truce would give Hamas time to reorganize, regroup, and rearm, further extending the war. The Palestinian group would look to restock its arsenal of rockets, repair its communication systems, reorganize its scattered forces, and also assess the damage to its strategic underground tunnel network, which has been its biggest strength as of now in this war. The ceasefire may delay the possibility of returning other hostages home. It would allow Hamas to move the hostages without fear of an Israeli raid to rescue them, ruining any intelligence Israel might have on the hostages' whereabouts. Strategic experts also say that ceasefire would send a dangerous message to Israel's additional adversaries in the region, and there are a number of them, particularly the Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah in Lebanon.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.